Sylvia Sidney comes in to break the tension.
Sylvia Sidney, yeah.
How were you approached to play this role?
Well, I was sent it. I read the script. I loved the character, what it was about. I was beginning to hear and be affected by, those of us in the theatrical community were early on affected by AIDS before it even was hitting the headlines. And there was nothing particularly courageous about it. They paid me well. I got to work with legendary...
You didn't think this was a risk for you?
No. I just don't think in those terms, I mean, probably to my detriment in some ways, but I don't know. Life is too short to think like that.
It was on a Monday night, and you were up against a Monday night football game. I don't know if you remember this, and a Cagney and Lacey show, and it was the #1 program that night. A lot of sponsors pulled out from that program. Was there any fallout after that in your career or reaction?
I think the reaction was only positive. I mean, we were all nominated with Emmys for it. It was, I think I had 8 or 9 Emmy nominations.
And Sylvia Sidney won the Golden Globe for her performance.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the Brandon Tartikoff had the guts at that time at NBC when the sponsors started pulling out, saying, as the president of NBC, saying, you know what, I don't care. I don't care who pulls out, we're airing this show. So hats off to him, and God rest his soul, he's not with us anymore. But, it took a lot of courage on his behalf to do that at that time.
Well, clearly it didn't affect your long-term career because you've gone on to work with all the big names, as we've mentioned, including Brad Pitt and Johnny Depp, Robert Duvall, Sir John Gielgud, Liam Neeson. And in fact, Brad Pitt was instrumental in you getting that role in Legends of the Fall. Isn't that true?
Yes. I understand that he really went to bat for me when the studio was having a hard time signing off on me, and so I'm very grateful to him.
Because the studio bosses wanted a bigger name for that
they
role.
always want a bigger name. They always want a bigger name.
But you're a pretty big name now.
It's the story of my life. It's all relative. It's all about some kind of perception. I have never ever been in that, A class, whatever that thing is. I'm an outsider born and bred, and it just seems to follow me and I'm comfortable with it. It's okay. Listen, I've had a wonderful career, and I'm very grateful for it.
But the entire Quinn family has almost, I think, 3 of your siblings have gotten into show business. Declan, your brother, is a cinematographer. Marion and Paul are actors.
Yeah. And directors.
And directors.
They both directed
Paul
films.
directed one of your films.
One of my favorite films. This Is My Father, that my brother Declan shot, that Paul wrote and directed. It's one of my favorite films that I've ever been involved in.
Was that semi-autobiographical?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Didn't have anything to do with...
No, it was based on a story that our mother told us about what happened to a neighbor of hers, but not autobiographical at all.
You've done several films, among them Michael Collins, that deal with Irish history or Irish culture. How important is it for you, not just to get the culture across, but maybe the perspective, the Irish perspective?
Well, I mean, it all depends on which film you're talking about. I mean, in Michael Collins, it was just a thrill to be part of telling that story, because the story of Michael Collins had been so buried in Irish history, because De Valera took over in the country and stayed. Even when I was living there in 1972 as a 13-year-old, he was still the president, and so even when he was blind and, but he was still wandering around in the state car as the president. So that was a very buried part of our history, the Civil War part, and what happened with Michael Collins and De Valera and Harry Boland, the character I played, and the 2 factions, and how the North became the North. And it was very, very important for that for people to see it and to relate to it.
Your wife, Elizabeth Bracco, the sister of Lorraine, is also an actress, of course. They were both in The Sopranos. How is that with an all-acting family? Not only your brothers and sisters, but your wife?
Well, it's just, we just have a pretty normal life, I mean, my wife has she had a great part in Sopranos the last couple of years, but she's pretty much sacrificed her career to take care of our children, and I'm forever grateful to her for that, because in some ways she's much more talented an artist than I am. You know, she's so multi-talented, making jewelry, painting, you know, she does all these things, and she's also a wonderful actress.
About 10 years ago, you did a movie called Two of Us, where you portrayed Paul McCartney. We have a little clip of that. Let's just show a few seconds of that.
If you couldn't deal with Yoko, you had no business dealing with me.
Well, that's just it. Where were you? You bloody disappeared. All of a sudden, everything's John and Yoko. Where's John? You turned your back on us, remember? Bloody right, I was mad at her. I was really mad at you. It was just easier to hate Yoko.
Oh, come on, Paul. You just wanted the game to go on a little longer, that's all. But Beatle Paul at the controls, you know, getting all the A-sides to the singles, made you feel special by all your society friends who thought yesterday was the greatest thing we ever did.
Damn right I was getting all the A-sides, because who else was coming up with any decent competition? It sure as hell wasn't you.
You were worried
and that was
about
a
close
group
a little
decision.
gold mine down,
yeah,
you know.
Because you had more important things on your mind, remember?
You needed me because you were afraid of being on your own. That everyone would finally see who was the real brains behind the Beatles.
The real brain? Oh, that's a laugh. Obviously, I didn't need you. I'm doing quite well without you now, aren't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and your silly love songs.
There's a few things that jump out. Not only do you have his accent and his mannerisms down, but your signature blue eyes are not blue there. Was that done in post-production, or did you wear contacts for that?
They're not? I'm trying to remember. No, I'm trying to remember. I didn't. No, I wear contacts. No, I wore contacts. That's right. Absolutely. I wore contacts. Absolutely.
And then you later met Paul McCartney after doing this.
Yeah.
And you've become friends.
Yes.
Did he see this movie?
Yes.
What did he think?
He really liked it. He really liked it. He was touched by it, which is shocking to me, because I look at that and all I do is cringe at how, you know, I didn't go far enough with the dialect, with the Liverpool thing. Now we're not trying to obviously look like them particularly, and Jared Harris, a wonderful actor that I got to work with there. But you know, we were suggesting them, and looking at that, I wish I'd suggested him a little bit more, because I could have gone deeper into that dialect.
But here's the question. That film is based on an incident that happened in 1976 where Paul McCartney went to see John Lennon after years of not talking to each other.
Yes.
But this film is mostly fiction.
Fictional.
Have you asked Paul what happened at that meeting?
Let me see if I can say this without betraying any confidence. I don't think Paul would mind if I said this. Yeah, I remember I did ask him, and he said, I wish we had said some of the things that you said to each other in that. He said it wasn't quite as expressive, the meeting, you know. So
the confrontation...
He was touched by the movie, you know. And I think, to be fair to him, it's the first movie that I know of where he gets a fair shake, you know. I mean, all the criticisms about, you know, the John and Paul thing, they're there, but I think Paul McCartney's character and his genius gets a fair shake in this, and he stands up for himself. I thought that was wonderful. Michael Lindsay Hogg, our director, directed Let It Be, the documentary.
Wow.
So
you
know.
You have that connection there.
Yeah.
You have another one, another film coming out this month. It's a very lovely film, just from the snippets that I have seen. I haven't seen the whole thing. It's called A Shine of Rainbows. Tell us about that. Well,
I have two films, A Shine of Rainbows, which is coming out. We shot in Donegal. It's by Lillian Beckwith, a very famous author. Vic Sarin is the director. I work with Connie Nielsen and a wonderful young actor named John Bell. And it's an allegorical story about a couple that can't have a child. And the mother goes off to the mainlands to adopt this kid, and she brings back this kid to this fishing island where we live. And I am not happy with this kid at all, because he's not what I had in mind.
He's not what you had hoped for. Let's show a clip from that film.
Sure.
You hard to talk to him?
I try. He hardly says a word.
You have to show him you want him.
I feed him. Put clothes on his back. Share me house with him. I can't help not having feelings for him the way you do.
But don't you see, Alec? I need you to share more things with him. And not just a house.
Stop it! Stop it! Give me a ball. Ben's a good boy.
I know you wished for our own child. But have you considered that maybe Tomas is a gift to us?
Good boy. That's you.
It's already received a lot of accolades, including top prize at the Chicago International Children's Film Festival.
Yes.
That's a pretty nice thing that your hometown gave it that
Yeah.
award.
No, it's lovely, yeah.
And you know, that kid could do a lot worse than that scenery and those parents, I would guess.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
Pretty lucky. Anything that, you've done other theater along the way, but you haven't been back to Chicago in a long time.
No.
Anything that could lure you back here?
You know something? No. I mean, to film, definitely. But I have an 11-year-old daughter, and I've kind of made a pact with my family and myself that I will be home more than I was for my 20-year-old daughter. So I'm not going to do theater unless it's when she's away at college. So I have another 7 years, maybe after that.
So
yeah.
we could start negotiating for 7 years
Yeah,
to
yeah.
have you come back to Chicago.
Yeah, but I do want to talk about another Irish film that I have that came out today and was actually, Roger Ebert gave it a great review too, called The Eclipse, which is an Irish film directed by Conor McPherson. And it's a wonderful, wonderful film, and I'm very happy. I play a real, a complete, how can we say, arsehole on this program.
Well, it sounds Irish enough that we can.
Yeah,
Included.
I could play a complete egomaniac, and it was a really fun part to play. And we shot that in Ireland as well.
And while we're waiting for your big theatrical return to Chicago, you have about 8 other films coming out in the next year or so. So a lot of work.
Yes, yes. I've got a lot of films out there. You know, it's when you do independent films, though, you really, now you never even know, are they ever going to get an actual theatrical release? I mean, it's not like the old days.
Do you prefer one to the other, the independent films versus the big Hollywood,
I
big budget
prefer,
films?
Actually, no. I mean, I prefer the quickness of doing, the intensity of doing independent films, you know. Usually I prefer the pay in the larger films, although that's not always necessarily the case. I sometimes get paid better in the lower budget films than the big budget films now. It's a strange world.
But
we
one
live
is
in.
better for the acting soul than the other in some cases,
Yes, but
no?
not, when the camera's rolling, it doesn't matter. It's just how long it takes. And
You do your
all
job.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
It's great to see you, and thanks for coming back to Chicago.
Yeah,
Come
my
back
pleasure.
as often as you'd like.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
And we'll see you on the next edition of the Friday Night Show. My thanks to Aidan Quinn. Have a good evening.